This is huge! SpaceX's 8th flight of Starship is less than a month away. What's left to do? Ship 34 gets its engines, we uncover a gigantic SpaceX secret, astronomers find an asteroid painted red? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. With Starship's 8th launch less than a month away, it's that time again. The next item on SpaceX's to-do list ahead of the next launch is the static fire of their next booster. Pad A refurbishments are in full swing. Workers have been performing repairs around the clock. Based on past timelines, a booster rollout should be imminent. After Flight 6, it took SpaceX just 16 days between the launch of Flight 6 and the rollout of the next booster in line. Looking back a little further to the previous successful catch on Flight 5, which would likely be a closer comparison due to the extra force of a booster landing, it took only 9 days between launch and rollout. It's now been 15 days as of this episode's release since Flight 7. It's about time, SpaceX. Let's see what you can do next. The pad has taken its fair share of damage again, as reported in the last episode. It all depends on how fast they can fix it up for its next firestorm. These near-constant repairs are why SpaceX has been focusing much of its recent attention on Pad B, and things seem to be progressing at an extremely rapid pace now. In a little over a week, SpaceX fully assembled and stacked the new chopsticks onto Tower B. With those now attached, the final prep work has begun. Teams secured the chopsticks to the carts, enabling them to move up and down along rails on the tower. Once that was achieved, both of the LR-11,000 cranes, which were used to install the chopsticks, could be detached. Then teams began connecting the cable chain, which takes power and data from the ground and the tower and transfers it to the chopsticks. With that now finished, the chopsticks will be able to communicate with the tower and the ground to receive commands, like up and down and up and down. The chopsticks are nearing full operation with only a few key steps remaining. SpaceX will now begin installing the massive hydraulic actuators that will enable them to move and open precisely. The chopsticks also still need to be attached to the tower's drawworks system. A cable from a gigantic oil rig drawworks motor runs up through a massive pulley system at the top of the tower and back down to the chopsticks to allow them to move up and down. This was a pretty genius move SpaceX already used on Tower A. It stays unchanged on the new tower. The benefit? You don't need to construct a new winch system. You can just use one from the offshore oil industry. The chopsticks on SpaceX's orbital launch tower are designed to lift, catch and support a super heavy booster and potentially the Starship upper stage. While SpaceX hasn't officially disclosed their exact load capacity, we can estimate their strength based on the weight of the vehicles they are designed to handle. The chopsticks won't need to lift fully fueled vehicles, only empty or partially fueled ones, so they are likely rated for at least 500 to 700 metric tons. Enough to safely grab and support the booster or ship during stacking and landing operations. SpaceX did perform weight tests on the Tower A chopsticks in 2022. The same happened again 3 months ago. Back then, the water bag weights had a total mass of around 500 tons. I'm expecting similar tests on Tower B in the not too distant future. Before we continue, our channel metrics show over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help improve the channel and double check that you've hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our updates. Like this video if you appreciate the content and become a wise supporter for extra content. Secure your access to up to 7 picture galleries per week, satellite, aerial and ground photos and 3D animations. Chat with me and gain more insights on the topic you love. Also check out redlineheli.com/Felix for a once-in-a-lifetime experience flying a helicopter above Starbase. The Redline helicopter team is waiting for you. They'll show you the same views our photographers get on their Starbase flights. That's redlineheli.com/Felix for $25 off. You rock! Back to the second tower. Now that all this work on the chopsticks is finished, teams have begun disassembling the scaffolding structure that was used to pre-assemble the chopsticks before their final installation. Work has not been limited to this tower. Massive amounts of tasks have also been performed on the ground support equipment. With the majority of the pipe work nearing completion, SpaceX can begin installing the tank hardware that connects to those pipes. Now, we've already seen some new installations over at the fuel farm, specifically with the 2 large horizontal tanks which were installed in the location of the old vertical tanks. Remember those? As well as the addition of numerous vaporizers and heat exchangers to enable the tank farm to feed the new pad even faster. However, we should see even more of this as SpaceX expands the fuel farm. And the most significant addition actually won't be propellant tanks, but rather significantly more water storage. And that's a good thing. Pad A's water tanks, which fed its flame deflector deluge system, aren't that large. However, Pad B has undergone some significant overhauls. The new flame diverter they are building will need massive water flow. Not just to suppress heat and sound, but also to inject water directly into the exhaust plume, preventing damage from high-velocity gas expansion. In addition, a water-cooled launch mount will be added to act as additional shielding, which hopefully will make it easier to repair. To support this, SpaceX isn't reusing the old 7 small tanks for Pad B. Instead, they are replacing them with 6 gigantic water tanks. These will feed into the new tank farm, supplying the high-pressure water flow needed for the deluge system. We know this because we can see the pedestals on which these tanks will rest, and we may have also spotted some of the tanks that will eventually go there. These will be much larger than Pad A's relatively small capacity. Hopefully, they'll ensure that this new pad has more than enough water to keep it safe during liftoff. Interestingly, during our flyover, we also noticed large amounts of excavation moving away from the pad and the fuel farm. SpaceX plans to add additional hardware in this area. However, instead of this area being used to store propellants, it's going to be used to produce them. SpaceX plans to build an air separation unit here, and the first parts for that may have been spotted just the other week as well. Progress on the pad has taken place not only at the launch site, but also at Sanchez on both the launch mount and the flame diverter. But first, let's talk about good news. Here's the situation. Blue Origin and SpaceX have traditionally been heated topics among space enthusiasts. Everyone knows this. Is SpaceX better or Blue Origin? Public opinion largely depends on what the news say. One of the best tools to see what the broader media world is saying, and my top source for my own research for What About It, is Ground News. So let's see what we can find when researching New Glenn's first launch. There's one thing we can see at first glance. Ground News found hundreds of sources with almost no negative headlines about the launch or Bezos himself. 90% of the sources you can find speak of a glorious moment when Jeff Bezos was with his loved ones and New Glenn reached orbit on the first try. Now let's see how the media frames SpaceX's Flight 7, which flew on the same day. That's very different. Again, hundreds of sources, but debris over the Caribbean and Starship explodes. Even a headline suggesting that the industry should not become dependent on SpaceX. You know, that's a bit off. That's the reality of media, but we can be smarter. Ground News gives us all the tools we need. They are subscriber funded, so you won't see any ads on their website contributing to sensationalism and clickbait reporting. By subscribing, you're also supporting Y directly as well. Go to ground.news/Y or scan the QR code on the screen. When you use my link, you can get 40% off unlimited access, which is what I use. Try it. Now back to Sanchez. Starting with the launch mount, SpaceX has begun installing the deluge feed pipes which connect to the water-cooled launch deck of the mount. These feed water into the mount at extremely high pressures to help it withstand the blast of the 35 Raptor engines of the future Block 2 boosters that will be launched from it. This is very similar in design to the water-cooled steel plate of the flame deflector, which SpaceX has been using relatively successfully on Pad A. This design is able to withstand the direct blast of the most powerful rocket booster ever built on Pad A. A similar design on Pad B won't receive a direct blast and should be more than adequate to protect the components inside. So that's the launch mount, but that's just one key component for Pad B. The other one, of course, is the brand new flame diverter, something that should arguably have found its way into Tower A few years ago. As soon as Pad B is operational, you can likely expect a refurbishment and upgrade session on Pad A. It'll likely get its flame diverter after all. After a short pause, SpaceX has continued installing the main pipes for the new diverter. These are protected by water flowing through the pipes to keep them cool and protect them during liftoff. SpaceX has quite a few of these pipes already prepped for installation on the ground in front of the diverter. The rest are ready for final construction. This next generation pad is also set to come online just in time for the next generation of Starship vehicles. Of course, the first flight of these next generation vehicles didn't exactly go 100% according to plan. Ship 33 experienced a rapid disassembly after a malfunction in the engine bay. Fortunately, the goal of these initial flights is to test the hardware to its limits and improve it with each launch. It's comparable to Robert Goddard's first rocket. The reason why it looked so strange was because he didn't know what to build. The same goes for SpaceX. Rockets are an old thing, but a Starship has never been built before. Ship 34, the next in line, shouldn't have any of Ship 33's problems and be much more robust, especially near the engine section. Increased vent capacity and a fire suppression system are the proposed fixes for Ship 34. Regarding its engine section, Ship 34 has seen some work, as it has finally started receiving its flight engines. It took a bit longer for SpaceX to install these than usual. This might be due to SpaceX upgrading the engine section following the results of Flight 7. I'm starting to get an acute case of launch fever again. I can't wait for Flight 8. But when will that be? With engine installation beginning, we can get a pretty good estimate of the timeline for this next flight. Ship 33 took around a month between engine installation and static fire. What do you think? Flight 8 before March? Let me know in the comments. Hopefully this ship will roll out to Massey's relatively soon to perform its spin prime and static fire tests. Ship 34 isn't the only one making massive progress. Ship 35 is also well into development. After the anomaly of Flight 7, Ship 35 has a good chance of being the first to attempt a catch if everything goes as planned on Flight 8. Now it's almost complete, having received its second to last segment. The lower half of the liquid oxygen tank was rolled into the Mega Bay ahead of stacking. The downcomer installation jig was also rolled in. This jig is used to install the downcomer pipes on Block 2 ships, and this step must be completed before the final piece can be installed. With this segment now stacking, only the engine bay is left. However, it may take a little longer as SpaceX will likely want to modify it to incorporate the changes made after Flight 7, similar to what was needed with Ship 34. With the Star Factory getting closer to full operation, the rapid assembly line production SpaceX is aiming for with Starship is getting closer and closer to reality. Mass production of the world's largest rocket. I like saying that. Nothing demonstrates this better than what was just recently spotted inside the Star Factory. The first parts for Ship 39. Of course, similar to when we first spotted Ship 38, this is only the upper header tank for this ship. However, it does show just how quickly SpaceX is developing these, and we know that this is only what we can see. SpaceX has many more components that are in development in the back of the Star Factory. With 39 now in development, we've spotted 6 Block 2 ships so far. Fun fact, that's already the same amount as Block 1 ships that got a chance to fly. Despite how quickly SpaceX has built these new ships, they are still far from the ultimate production goal. But there is a plan to change that. We need more ships. More. Despite the size of the Mega Bays and High Bay that it uses to stack its vehicles, they are still relatively limited. Starships are huge. That's why SpaceX has developed a so-called Giga Bay, which will be even larger. We knew nothing about it outside of a job listing a few months ago. Fortunately, that's finally changed, as on the 22nd, SpaceX filed with the FAA to construct a Giga Bay at their Roberts Road facility in Florida. So despite the job listing saying it was for Brownsville, Texas, it does appear that there will be a Giga Bay construction here in Florida, possibly before Starbase gets one. Construction is set to begin in early April, 2 months from now. And we may have already seen the first signs of this. Some recent satellite imagery shows the clearing being done at SpaceX's facility at Kennedy Space Center. A distinct spot can be made out here. The coordinates provided in the FAA filing put the Giga Bay location right in this spot. This would make sense as the FAA filing is mainly concerned with the height of the bay. SpaceX can work on the foundations for it even sooner, if not as we speak. Along with the start date, the filing also gave us an end date, which is set for August of 2026. This Giga Bay will take quite a while, and it has a pretty good reason for taking so long. It is set to be absolutely massive. So just how big is this thing going to be? What are we talking about? The filing finally gives us a height measurement, with the bay set to be a whopping 116 meters tall. This is a 15% increase in height over the megabays, which are around 100 meters tall. But that's only the beginning. Looking at the clearing that has been made may give us a reasonable estimate of the length and width. With this, we can also estimate the internal volume. Are you ready? If this does turn out to be the case, then this building would be absolutely gigantic. With a rough length of 175 meters and a rough width of around 200 meters, it has an area of approximately 38,000 square meters and an internal volume of over 4 million cubic meters. Let's put that into scale real quick. For reference, SpaceX's mega bays each cover an area of around 3,000 square meters and have an internal volume of only around 300,000 cubic meters. Only. In other words, the Giga Bay could have more than 10 times the volume of a Starbase megabay. Of course, these measurements are just estimates. However, when it comes to rockets, a building with this much volume isn't out of the realm of possibilities. Looking right down the road, we have a pretty good example: NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building. This building has a volume of around 3.5 million cubic meters, currently making it the world's largest single-story building. It was constructed for the Saturn V and Apollo programs, which brought us to the moon. Starships are set to take us to the moon and Mars, so 4 million cubic meters isn't out of the question. SpaceX may be gunning for the VAB's record. Put simply, this Giga Bay is set to be absolutely ridiculous. SpaceX's goal is getting more and more clear. Starbase Texas will not be the biggest Starship production hub. Right now, the Florida facility will be much larger. Starship truly is on a different scale. This vehicle is set to open up the solar system to us, although in the meantime, the Falcon 9 is doing a pretty good job at opening up access to space for a much more reasonable price. This includes a lot of scientific missions outside of low Earth orbit, including 2 that it recently sent to the moon. Since they both launched a bit ago, we figured it would be a good time to check in on them. Both landers appear healthy and are still on track toward the moon. Blue Ghost in particular is making good progress. It has now completed 2 maneuvers using burns to slowly raise its apogee before eventually flying to the moon. This maneuver takes it quite far away from the Earth, allowing it to capture amazing footage like this. iSpace's Hakuto R has also been busy, although it's been relatively passive compared to Blue Ghost, with its first maneuvers still to happen. However, due to its trajectory, it was also quite far away from Earth. It took this amazing photo of what is known as Point Nemo on Earth, the farthest point from any civilization on the planet. Earth seen from this spot shows almost only water. As our last story for the day, we have a fun one from the outer solar system and a throwback. Scientists found a pretty interesting asteroid. While most asteroids tend to be gray, this one for some reason was bright red. And that's not the only thing, it seemed to have an astronaut in it as well. Okay, well, not really. As it turns out, this asteroid that scientists discovered was actually just Elon Musk's private car. He launched his own Tesla Roadster into space on Falcon Heavy's first flight in 2018. This flight launched the red EV into an orbit between Earth and Mars, where astronomers discovered it early this month. They quickly realized that it was merely a piece of space debris history. While this is pretty interesting, it also reveals a problem. This isn't the only piece of abandoned space hardware floating around. As the cost of accessing space decreases and the number of missions outside Earth orbit increases, this problem will become increasingly serious. Space won't turn into a parking lot, but it will get crowded up there. For astronomers especially, this can become a pretty significant headache. These pieces of space junk also stay relatively close to Earth, and they can be confused with more important things. Near-Earth asteroids are often some of the most important, as they provide the best opportunities for missions or could even pose a risk to Earth. Seeing that space travel is set to take off in the coming years, detection systems need to change fast. Hopefully that is easier than rocket science. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm. This is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our brand new Starship Block 2 design are both up. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. Also check out our print store at shop.whataboutit.space to buy a picture for your favorite wall. A significant amount of every purchase goes directly to our photographers. And if you want to learn more about the amazing story of SpaceX's Raptor 3 engine, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. If successful, where astronomers problems will texters like up and down and up and down.